Hi guys, and welcome to our second episode of the Knox podcast. Today we have Kyle joining us, and we're going to be talking about the best locations in the UK to invest for yields and the best places to put your money into. Do you want to start?
Yeah, I mean, the best place to, without a doubt, to really begin is where our office is based, head office, Manchester.
Yep.
We both live in the city, different areas of the city, but you can't deny that it's one of the strongest markets in the UK due to the regeneration projects that are going on, the high tenant demand, the growing amount of students each year that are actually staying in the city too. So there's many different assets that actually make Manchester such a great hotspot for investors.
No, absolutely. I completely agree. I think obviously we are biased. You know, lots of people will say we're biased, seeing as we live here and we work here. But I think lots of people are recognising Manchester as, you know, I've actually heard people say it's almost like a little London now. Like we've got everything here. You know, we've got everything and more that you could ever want here. It's a much smaller city. It's obviously prices are much more affordable compared to London. I think the average price in Manchester's 250 grand for a property. London might be 500 grand. And you've got student population. I think there's 120,000 students now in Manchester. Yeah. You know, yields are strong. I think rents increased 19% 2023 alone. And we're seeing prices skyrocket as well in line with that. But people want to be here. You know, people want to move here. Lots of people actually move from London to live here as well, don't they?
Yeah, exactly. And I think, like you say, we have everything that anyone would ever want. Like I believe 80 of the FTSE 100 companies are based now in Manchester. So a lot of the job opportunities that people would have in London can get here and live for a fraction of the cost of living. So basically rent's cheaper. Cost of living, as I say, is much cheaper here to actually just set up and live. And also with the remote working these days, there's many opportunities to get jobs based in London.
Exactly, yeah.
Live in Manchester and pay a fraction again of the rent, but getting the London prices.
Yeah. And in terms of investment wise, you know, what's the typical yield now in Manchester? It's what, 7.5%, I think, across the board. Obviously, you've got your residential apartments or properties, if you like, delivering anywhere between kind of 5 to 6% net with huge capital growth, especially if you're buying into some of these off-plan projects with these major developers. You know, they might be 18 months, 2 years off plan, but the capital growth you see for when they complete is huge. And then you've got your student properties, which anywhere between kind of 7, 8, 9% yields. So you've got two very, very strong markets that are relatively affordable compared to certainly, as I mentioned, London. So
yeah, and I can only speak from my experience going to university here in Manchester, Salford University, which we actually have a development based around that location, which previous phases are fully occupied. Yeah. Rents have increased dramatically each year with around that university. Yeah. There's a large demand, as we say, about 120,000 students across the three universities, Salford, Manchester, Manchester Metropolitan. But I always tell my investors a little story of when I went to university and then when my sister is at university now. 9 years difference between the two of us. Yeah. Gone to the same university. I paid £80 a week. And now she's paying £140 a week.
It's crazy,
in terms of students. Now they are getting nicer student accommodation with
top of the range stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, basically like hotels.
Yeah.
Great facilities, but that's just showing the strength of the market that we have in not only Manchester but even the student markets. Yeah, and then graduating and living here as a young working professional in the city. Paying rents for a 3-bedroom not long after that was about £1,000 a month. To then, those are the prices of a 1-bed today. So again, it's just dramatic, and the demand makes the market again so strong, and the growth that is available is unmatched.
I know, and I think the growth. I speak to lots of people and they go, "Oh, isn't it overdeveloped?" Haven't they? Because you see so many cranes, you see so many buildings flying up and popping up, but the demand still far outweighs it. To be able to, if you try to rent a one bed in Manchester, it's near impossible.
Yeah.
People take them without viewing them. People take them without seeing them. When I first moved to Manchester, I could not get a one bed.
Yeah.
It was impossible. People were reserving them without viewing them, without anything.
Videos,
yeah, just take them because they were so scarce. So the demand still far outweighs the supply. So you've got areas where you've got like the Deansgate Square area. Obviously, most people know about that, the big towers and things like that. Now, yes, they're still building developments. We've got a couple available at the moment that are off plan, but there are now different little pockets in Manchester, a little bit further north of the city centre that they're regenerating, which are almost going to boom in the next kind of 8 to 9 years. So there's still a lot of growth and a lot of, like I said, pockets for developers and investors to tap into.
Yeah, kind of going on both points that you mentioned then. So the fact that people are taking the apartment space on just videos alone.
Yeah.
I've had friends who've been in closed auctions almost just to get the apartment.
Yeah.
They're bidding for who wants to pay the most rent
Yeah.
in that particular apartment. So they might market the available apartment for £1,000 a month, but another tenant might be, I'll give you 1,100, I'll give you 1,200.
And people pay it.
Yeah, people pay it.
Yeah,
they don't know what they're offering, but the landlord's clearly just going to look, I'll pick the one who's paying the most rent. And then with the pockets of areas in Manchester, like you're mentioning, you do have Deansgate. You do also have New Islington as well, where I live. So we're both on opposite sides of the city.
That's, thank God. Spend enough time with you here at work.
Basically, eye contact 24/7. But New Islington, it's the up-and-coming area. It's kind of the extension of Northern Quarter, just like Ancoats.
Yeah.
And when I first moved to the city, Ancoats was not the kind of place that you would want to probably walk around at night. Whereas now it's got
stunning now.
Yeah, Michelin
really
star
nice.
restaurants.
Yeah.
And this just shows again the growth and
it's like the development of the area and just how they've all come along, isn't it?
Yeah,
they're all kind of tying into one as a main city, as Manchester. Like they were quite different areas, like you mentioned. You'd go into Northern Quarter, it'd be restaurants and bars, and that's where everyone would go if they just wanted to go out. And then you wouldn't really go to kind of Ancoats or New Islington, that kind of area at night. Whereas now, they're lovely areas.
Oh yeah, I love living around New Islington because it's actually got the canal, a little bit more peaceful. But again, there's a lot of opportunity for regeneration, and they are doing some huge projects around there. So if you buy around there, then that's going to get you some good capital appreciation. Same like Deansgate, the prices are high now, but they're not slowing down.
No, they're not.
With not more towers going up. That's not going to stop anytime soon with the actual projects that are based around there. And Spinning Fields, for example, again, another area, but all these locations are probably no more than 10, 15 minutes walk away from each other.
Yeah, they're all on a touching distance, aren't they, from each other?
Yeah, stone's throw. And that's probably what surprises a lot of our investors from London who come to visit Manchester.
It's small. It feels tiny compared to London. If I ever go to London, it's almost intimidating. Like if you come from Manchester, you can walk almost from one side of Manchester to the other in what would you say?
Like 20, 30 minutes.
Yeah,
basically.
half an hour. You walk around London for half an hour. You
barely moved.
Yeah, you're just a little bit further down the road.
Yeah, that's it. Still on the same street.
Yeah. So but it's a very different market. In London, again, they have pockets of areas where are very good for investment. If you've got the cash, if you've got the capital, and the know-how, you can make great investments in London. You can make a lot of money in London, but yields are very, very hard to come by in comparison to Manchester, Liverpool, Huddersfield, Stoke, places like that.
Mm-hmm.
These northern cities are outperforming the south by a mile.
Yeah.
And I think it's very hard to argue that, even if you are a London investor, if you like.
Exactly. And not only do you have, like, say, the price of the property that you might be investing, the yield's lower. We had it a lot when we went to the Cityscape exhibition in Saudi Arabia. And what's the first thing that a lot of investors...
London.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Do you have anything in London?
Yeah.
And we say, we do, but it's going to cost you a lot more money, whereas you can buy 2-3 apartments in Manchester for the same price.
The same price, yeah.
Get them a much higher yield, better growth, better spacious apartments. And also they're probably going to end up paying much less tax on stamp duty as well. You show them the actual prices of what they're paying and what they might be losing out on compared to what they could be getting in Manchester. They're surprised.
And I think lots of that comes down to people sometimes want a trophy investment. They want to be able to kind of say to their friends, I've got an apartment in London.
Yeah.
And it's like the wow factor. But Manchester is almost becoming a little bit like that, because just bringing it back to when we went to Saudi Arabia, lots of people also go, oh, Manchester.
Yeah.
Piccadilly Station. Lots of people mention Piccadilly Station.
Yeah, exactly.
They mention the train stations, Manchester United, things like that. And it's almost becoming, Manchester's almost like a bit of a trophy investment as well. And look at some of these developments now. They are absolutely a trophy investment. Some of the facilities and the specification and location of these developments is phenomenal. Not to mention a few that we've sold, completed, and some that we are selling now. They are really, really, really nice apartments and developments.
Completely agree. None of the investors regret buying them. Because
nobody.
They'll buy them. We're honest in terms of telling them you can expect this kind of rent, but we're always conservative with what the rents will be. And we also are very surprised ourselves with how much the rents have increased in such a short space of time.
Yeah.
So we say you'll get 6% if you buy early enough off plan, get the good price. When it comes to actually the completion, they're getting more, and they've got this amazing apartment which is tenanted straight away. Get the best types of tenants who can actually who want to be there for the long term, for example. And as I say, with the actual properties themselves, they're stunning. We can't believe that Manchester, as I say, when I first came, we didn't have these, and never thought there would be a market for this amazing 5-star hotel sort of development, whereas now it's what everyone wants.
It's almost the standard now.
Yeah.
And I think it's good. It's really good to have that kind of standard as a city in terms of the property development. If that's the standard of the city, it makes people want to live here, makes people want to work here, and I think it's great. It's great for everybody. It's great for the economy. It's great for investors, obviously, and everyone's a winner, really. If that's the case, if the standard increases and it remains like that, rent stays strong, class of tenants remains strong, then it will always be a good place to invest.
Exactly, and like you're saying just earlier, with the more higher end developments that we do have. Because we have a lot more going on in Manchester now, like I say, a lot more job opportunities that are probably paying a lot higher income when we've got the London students or London-based tenants that used to live in London, and they've decided that they can live a lot more cost-effective life or much more easier costs of living in Manchester and having the same job opportunities. They are happy to spend the higher rents in Manchester for the more premium opportunity or the premium developments that we have.
Yeah, and I think it's not just Manchester as well. I think Manchester is, and like I mentioned, I think we probably are biased, but it's true. I think Manchester really is right at the top, and it's at the top of its game at the moment. But there are other cities that, Liverpool's a great one. think there's 90,000 students there. Average yields of maybe just over 7%, and similar kind of setup. I don't think Liverpool has seen such a drastic increase in rents as other cities, but I think off the back of that, it's a good time to get into Liverpool. Prices are slightly lower. Maybe your average price is 190k compared to 250 in Manchester. But it's a good time to get in before that kind of boom, before the growth, before the prices increase so much. And we are now, we've got a handful of developments in Liverpool that are doing very well, and people want them, don't they? People ask for Liverpool.
Exactly. Like Liverpool, you can't go wrong with as well. It's literally 30 minutes away from Manchester, like the northern powerhouse, as we like to say, the northwest.
Yeah.
Two major cities, two of the biggest cities in the country, right next to each other in one location. Both are going to do very well. But again, with London, prices are a little bit lower. So if you're happy to wait a little bit longer for appreciation, by now, maybe 5-10 years, it'll catch up with Manchester. But yeah, with the Liverpool prices, they are on average a little bit lower in Manchester compared to Manchester, due to, let's say, you can buy a 2-bed for the price of one bed. That's usually the differences, and the yields are over 7%. You can still experience a lot of growth in and out of the city centre due to, again, a large population of students, and they retain a large amount of those. But again, the regeneration projects that Liverpool have is proving to develop the city in a large way, like the Waterfront development that we say, where one of our developments is actually based.
Prince's Docks, is it?
I believe so. It's more just the £5.5 billion regeneration project, which is one of the largest in the UK. And they actually have the same designer doing the Waterfront than Toronto, of the same designer who did Toronto's and Shanghai's Waterfront.
All right.
And if you think of how iconic Shanghai's Waterfront is, that's clearly going to put something on the map for Liverpool. Well, put Liverpool on the map.
Yeah. I didn't know that. I didn't actually know that.
It's interesting. I mean, it's a long project, but if you can buy on top of the Waterfront now, you're going to experience a large growth, similar to like what happened to Media City in Manchester. You know, there wasn't possibly much going on around there at the time, but if you bought it early enough,
I mean, Media City was empty, wasn't it?
And it's still growing, and people can still get a lot of growth in that location.
Yeah.
But the same will happen in Liverpool. There is a large amount of the city's population there and a lot going on, but it's only going to continue to grow. And then they've also got the Knowledge Quarter, for example, which is where a large amount of their universities are based. A lot of students and research hubs are there. That was £1 billion regeneration project, which is bringing a lot to the city as well. Yeah,
and I think people sometimes don't realise how much money goes into regeneration projects. You know, it's very easy to say to someone, you know, it's a great development, it's in a great area, there's lots of regeneration going on around there, and they think, oh right, yeah, building a few more restaurants and bars, and you know, maybe some commercial units and stuff. But spending £5 or £6 billion, you know, that's a huge project, and that only has one effect on the properties and the property market in that area, and it's that it goes up. You know, the prices go up, demand goes up, yields go up, and it's the same whether it's in Manchester, Liverpool, you know, even some of the other cities that people don't necessarily think about first, but you know, Huddersfield, for example, Stoke-on-Trent, you know, big student populations, where you know, we're selling developments that you get 10% net returns.
Exactly.
But price points are 80, 90k for the units. So there are these other areas where you can tap into in the north, whereby the lower price points, you're outside of London, you don't have to spend £500,000 to get a property and get 3%. You can spend 80 grand and buy a property in an area where student demand is strong. You know, Huddersfield are building a £250 million health and innovation campus now, aren't they?
Yes, correct.
And we're selling a development on that campus.
Yeah, literally on top of it.
Yeah. So, and that's 10% net. You know, you get 10% net if you buy one of those, and it's just about understanding other areas. Like you said, when you speak to people, especially overseas, it's London. What's in London? What's in London? And it's like, well, seeing as you're not going to be in the UK and it's going to be fully managed for you anyway, why don't you look at other areas where you can get 2-3 times that return? And they're always open to it, aren't they, most of the time?
Yeah, as soon as you say, I can get you something in London, you spend £1 million on an apartment in Zone 1 and get 2% return each year. Or I can get you something which is £80,000 in Stoke, get you 10%. Which one do you really think we're going to go for? Yeah. It goes back to the trophy investment, but at the end of the day, some investors are really just there to see a return on the money that they put in. And like you said, they never even see the apartment. It's fully managed for them. So what difference does it make at the end of the day? They're not going to go and use it themselves. It's just like putting the money into a high interest savings account, taking along, getting rental income, no stress. That's what we've been specializing in for 20 years, is these hands-off investments, where a large majority or a large percentage of our investors are based overseas. 40%, I believe, about is what we have now. And a large amount of my clients are based overseas, and they love the student investment because it's a nice little entry price for them to test what it's like to go into the UK. Yeah. They'll see the return, and then they come back and buy more, whether the residential market in Manchester or student projects in Huddersfield, where they can get 10%, or maybe they want to spread the cost out a little bit, so they buy off plan or completed. It works very nicely for them anyway.
No, I agree. And I think our job is to consult people on that. You know, lots of people, I once spoke to somebody and she said, oh, my dad told me never to invest less than 5 miles from your own home. And I was thinking, it's just bad advice. It's just bad advice. Just because you can walk there in 15 minutes, 15 minutes, if you can get there within the hour, doesn't mean it's a good investment. And I think people's risk threshold is very different, which is absolutely fine. But if you sit down with someone and you talk to them and say, look, yes, you've got this cash. If I can offer you something whereby it's managed by a very professional company that's been doing property management for years in an area which is, which has high demand for this type of accommodation, whatever it may be, and the yields are 8, 9, 10%, are you really telling me you don't want to consider that and buy the house down the road where you are and just get 3%, which you can get more in the bank just because it's next door to you? Mm-hmm. And I think people don't quite understand sometimes that those options are available, and you don't just have to invest in areas that necessarily. Yes, do your due diligence, but ultimately it's companies and businesses like us that do that for you and can present you with these opportunities whereby your money is working better for you, and in the long run, it's a better investment.
No, I agree. I think just times have changed since possibly when people were originally invested in property. Like, very much an old way of doing it a couple of years ago would be you buy a house, you mortgage 25% deposits. They're all within walking distance of you. Hands-on investor. They want to keep an eye on everything. They want to know where the tenants are, and that was the only way that they would do it. They'd only buy houses and keep it that way. Whereas now we have a lot more access to everywhere around the country to invest, even around the world, and that's what obviously attracts our investors from overseas to here. They can literally buy an apartment over the phone and through an email, and just looking at some floor plans, and it makes them a large amount of return on the money that they put in to begin with. And we probably didn't have that access that long ago. Some people probably didn't have that access a long time ago. So the fact that we continue to do that just shows that they can obviously get the large return from the investment.
Yeah, and I think it's, like you said, it just wasn't accessible back then, and also things that we have now weren't available back then, and the 10, 15 years ago, assisted living properties and things like that weren't massive, but, look in yields, looking at yields now and areas that have strong yields, places like Doncaster, Barnsley, Bradford, small towns, cities, where you wouldn't necessarily think to invest into, actually have some of the strongest yields. And yes, it's because prices may be low, but these are also areas that we've got assisted living properties in, and you have protection with 25-year rental contracts and things like that, as well as owning a residential property in these actually high-yielding areas where some people turn their nose up to, and actually as an investment can be very lucrative and very rewarding in the end.
Yeah, and I think a great thing with the assisted living opportunities that we do have, a large amount of them are based in the locations that you just said, in Yorkshire.
Northern areas,
Northern
Yorkshire,
areas. Yeah. However, even with them being in a good location, with the assisted living, it doesn't really matter where you're purchasing with that one. If you buy in Bradford, if you buy in Doncaster, if you buy in Beverley, if you buy in Sheffield, any one of those, which we have had the assisted living projects in previously, they've all got the same 25-year rental contract. They all give you 8.5 to 10% as a net return. They all have no cost to pay, rents increasing, and they all have the options agreement or the exit clause that's included in that.
So I think we've covered the major kind of cities that we'd probably recommend investing into over the next year and the next few years, probably. Mm-hmm. Being, Manchester obviously is strong for all markets, I think, residential, student. Liverpool, probably the same, wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, in terms of, we've mentioned best ones for residential, student market, say Manchester, Liverpool, Huddersfield, Stoke.
Yeah.
There could be more in the future. Mm-hmm. As we say, we tend to focus on the places that's going to get our investors the best return. Mm-hmm. So it might change in the near future, but most likely we'll have somewhere like a foot on the ground in that location. Yeah. And like the assisted living stuff, we've managed to discuss the best locations with our assisted living models in Yorkshire or the northwest region.
Absolutely. And I think we may have missed, I don't know, we may have missed a couple off, but I think we've covered enough there for people to either get in touch or have some questions, certainly. If you like this video, please feel free to like and subscribe for more content.
If you want to see another episode of the podcast or a similar video, then click